Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start.
Hi everyone, Nemo here, and what a day it has been for Mormonism in the UK. We heard about some big plans when it comes to the stakes in and around the London area, and we lost a stake. Watford Stake is no more. We got some renaming as well. It's all very exciting. And so to talk about it with me, I have brought along the Britvengers, because, you know, I can't do things anymore on my own anymore. I'm kind of codependent. Here we go. Say hi everyone.
Oh.
Hey.
Hello. Hey. So we'll start with this that came up from the Watford Facebook page. The Watford Stake Facebook page put this banner up. Watford England Stake, 28th of April 1996, the 14th of May 2023. And they've got the names of all the previous stake presidents who have been members, who have been presidents of that stake. It's quite sad, isn't it, really, for those members in that ward? I think. So let's start by putting a video clip up. And this video clip was a letter that was sent to the stake president to explain to him what was going to be happening. Because, you know, it's not a stake conference if we haven't managed to record it.
The next part would be that we would sustain the members of the stake presidency and all of our stake leaders. But I want to read a letter to you that was received by President Fu on the 27th of April, just recently. Dear President Fu, in a recent meeting of the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, approval was given to discontinue the Watford England Stake and to extend to you and your councillors honourable releases from your positions in the stake presidency. This will take place at the conference to be held on May 14th, 2023, today. We want you and your councillors to know of our heartfelt gratitude for your loyal, consecrated service to the Lord, His cause and His people over whom you have had the honour to preside. We also acknowledge the valued support and service given by your wife and the wives of your councillors. This matter should not be announced to the stake members until the assigned general authority contacts you about the reorganization. That's what we have been doing. We pray that the Lord will bless, protect, and be with you always. Sincerely, your brethren, Russell M. Nelson, Dallin H. Oakes, and Henry B. Eyring.
So that on the left is President Fu, who is the president of Watford Stake, and I've blurred the faces of the ladies up on the stand because they were members of the stake who I don't feel necessarily need to have their identities revealed. So what are our thoughts, everyone, about that letter, about the fact that he was asked not to reveal it until the assigned authority was able to come and let it happen? What do you think, Ruth?
Oh, I just think that's, you know how hard people work, you know how much effort and time they put into things, and they also probably knew the writing was on the wall. So you probably had a lot of whispers and nudges and things, but people always will be serving hard, working hard, and hoping that maybe it's wrong, trying to figure out what might happen to them. I just think it's like waiting for an axe to fall, isn't it, when those sorts of things are happening in the background. Yeah,
because I found out about it in the week.
Yeah.
From some sources who very kindly reached out and said you might want to keep an eye on Watford Stake, and sure enough, weren't disappointed. But I wonder whether it's to stop people like us doing things like this.
Well, what would happen? Yeah, I mean, other than that, what would happen if information actually did get out ahead of time and people could prepare, come to stake conference prepared for messages that are going to be specifically speaking to things that they have been praying. That's the point of stake conference, right? You're supposed to go with questions. You're supposed to think about how is this going to impact my life. Your stake is, everything's changing. What is that going to mean for you? And if you haven't been aware until today, then it's like crap, really, isn't it? It's
I think we've got some questions in the comments. We've got a question in the comments.
Gossip vine.
Right, we've got this delay again, which means that I can never cut Peter Bleakley off effectively. Sorry. So don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. I will be doing my best to crowd control. Someone wanted to know who was reading the letter. That's Hans T. Boom. He's the president of the Europe North area, which is the area that the UK resides in. And so that's why he was there. He was there doing that, representing the area presidency. Peter, please continue.
I was just going to say, I mean, they do have to keep a grip on it, though, because otherwise rumours upon rumours just tie everyone in knots all the time. So you can understand them not wanting to kind of launch until they can manage the situation and give people the answers they want. So that's not entirely unreasonable, I think.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Julian?
Yeah, I'm sure there are good reasons for it. It is unfortunate, though, sometimes when these things happen, because, you know, we are with, you know, these wards and stakes mean a lot to us. You know, we talk about a ward family, you know, and by extension there's a stake family. And, you know, I think about my ward growing up, you know, other than when I was on my mission, I've only ever been in 2 wards. And the ward that I grew up in, you know, I left there when I was probably about 30. You know, there's people there that knew me, you know, from when I was born, and you know, and that kind of ward identity, stake identity, is really, really important. It makes me think about when they. So I was part of the Solihull Hall ward. It makes me think about when they closed the Sheldon ward, which was another nearby ward. They closed it down and brought them together. And the way that they did it was they just said, we're going to have a joint meeting. And in that joint meeting, the people of the Sheldon ward were told, right, Sheldon ward is no more. You are now part of the Solihull Hall ward. Don't go back to the chapel. That's it. It's finished.
Do not pass go. Do not collect £200.
Yeah, and I just thought how it would have been so nice if they'd have had an opportunity to have had their last ward social, you know, and had some. I imagine that in a situation like this, if the Watford Stake were told, right, actually, we're going to disband the Watford Stake and the wards are going to be moved around, then they would say, well, let's have a big party. Let's get together, have a big party. Let's celebrate the Watford Stake for, you know, however long it was together. Let's say goodbye to all our friends that we've gone to all of these meetings. You know, you'd think that would be something that's really important. And yet this doesn't allow for any of that. It just says, right, okay, as of now, you're separated from these people. And I just think that's a real shame.
But then I think the reason they do that is because they don't want this to be a big event. They don't want this to be something notable, because then it will start to draw attention to the fact that this has happened. They really wanted this to pass without much event, and that's why we're kind of not giving them what they want by going on and talking about it and telling everyone that it's happening. Because what this looks like is the church is shrinking, and stakes closing is never good. Jane?
Yeah, because I feel like it needs a little bit more pushing of the why is it so bad that members. What if the information wasn't quite accurate? What if Mormons heard rumors of stake closures and, you know, is it the end of the world? And actually, I think that's exactly what it is. If we start having rumors of potential closures near, it makes us a bit uneasy. So we need to know what's the plan? Why is this okay? And it needs to be presented to us in a way where we feel very, very safe. And I think that's what today attempted to do.
Well, should we look at that presentation? Let's have a look at it being presented to us. So here was the announcement from Elder Boom. This was just after they'd asked the stake presidency and their wives to stand up and receive a vote of thanks. And that's it. That's all the goodbye they get. That's all the thanks they get. No one gets a chance to really, you know, like I said, no activity that they could have kind of spent some time with people or anything like that. Here we go.
Now, what's going to happen with the Watford Stake? There's a big London boundary plan where they've been working on for the last 2 years. And it was sent in October to the First Presidency in the 12th to review. And it has been taking a long time to review because it is a huge plan. And 11 stakes in the London area are part of that plan. What is the plan? As you are all aware of, the units in the London area are sometimes small. And the stakes are rather small as well. And it's really difficult to take from the units the number of high counselors, the Stake Relief Society presidency, the Stake Young Women's presidency, a Young Men's presidency, and all of that. And so 2 years ago, they started to work on a plan. And the plan contains that 3 of the stakes will be completely dissolved, and the strength will be put into the other stakes. This is the first day, and the plan will be finished on the 11th of June. Also, some of the units from the Ipswich stake will go into some of the London stakes.
Okay, so Ipswich is also getting drawn into this, but I thought that was really interesting that he said that we are going to see the changing of 3 stakes being closed and then multiple boundary redraws. Because here I was thinking, when I received information from my source in Watford, that, well, Watford's just going to get pushed around. I didn't realise that Reading, my current stake, was also going to get reorganised, and we'll come to that in a little bit. But that, you know, there's wards in my stake now that have gone to Staines stake, to a different stake. My stake got renamed to the Thames Valley England stake because it seems that it covers that geographical area. So, yeah, this has been a big change, and they've been planning it for how many years? 2 years.
2 years.
Sorry, I muted you, Ruth. Apologies.
Yeah, so 2 years.
2 years.
So I feel like this is so very corporate, and if this was a corporate organisation, then you would expect them to hold back because it would impact the stock market if you announce we're going to be making these changes, or we're having a change of leadership at the top, whatever. It has ripples through the markets. They're acting as a corporate identity, but this is real people's hearts and souls and families and ward families and stake families that it's impacting. And they've had 2 years to actually do the thing that sometimes we see in the corporate world, which is say to people, like M&S will do it every now and again. They'll say, there's this many shops are going to have to close. We're going to rejig. We're going to get rid of them, you know, and their workforce has time to think about that. Think about, do they stay with their employer? Do they move on to somewhere else? Are they happy to relocate to a new position somewhere else? They have time to work their way through that emotional connection to what they do. And I don't feel like the church has given, they've had 2 years in the background to think about this plan, but they've not given their wards and those 11 stakes time to think about what this might mean to them to go down from 11 stakes, not 11 wards, 11 stakes with however many satellite wards that includes, down to 8. And it's like rival football teams, isn't it, with stakes? I know, you know, in the nicest possible loving Mormon way, but you get very tied into your stake. If you're Leicester stake, Nottingham Stake are the ones you're up against, or Northampton Stake, you know, and you don't mean to be that way, but there is that sort of, you are your stake, that's part of your identity. Yeah. So to say, oh, you'll be all right, we'll just throw you in with this group of people, get on with it.
They're bringing back tri-stake athletics up in Coventry Stake, so Coventry, Birmingham, Leicester, they're bringing that back. So just at this time, when they're starting to close things down, they're trying to start bringing some things back. Just before we go to Julian, I want to mention my prediction for what 3 stakes I think will be closed out at the end of all this, because somewhere in here, we might not have it on video because I was rushing to get these clips ready, is that all this should be done by July the 11th. Should all be finished up by July the 11th, all this big long plan. Yeah. And so what that gives us is this time frame where June the 5th was when Lichfield Stake was closed. So that's just over a year. In just over a year, you lose 4 stakes in the UK. One of which is within the area where they're saying they're going to build a temple. I think we've lost Watford. I think we're going to lose Romford. That's where you're going to get some of that Ipswich changing ground and all that sort of stuff. I think we're going to lose Romford up there, and I think then we're going to lose either Canterbury or help me out, Peter. This is your neck of the woods. Maidstone, that's the one. Canterbury or Maidstone. Yeah.
I think I'll get rid of Maidstone rather than Canterbury.
Yeah. So Julian, then Peter.
Yeah, I was just when Ruth was talking there, I was thinking about the fact that what I would like to see with something like this is when they're making a big change like this, to have some consultation from the people that are involved. You know, it kind of I work in a school, and for anyone that works in education in the UK, you'll understand the whole thing of multi-academy trusts, where all of the decisions are made, you know, by people that are nowhere near the school, and you don't get the best, you know, out of that kind of setup. I do think it was good that he was honest in there, and he mentioned the fact that, well, we're struggling to fill all the roles. It's hard to fill all these positions, you know, and we've seen that before as well. There were some changes a while back with the Coventry and Birmingham stake, where Solihull moved from the Coventry stake to the Birmingham stake because Birmingham was struggling in terms of filling some of those priesthood roles. And I imagine that's exactly the same situation here. But I've got a suggestion that would help. So if they'd have come to me, rather than going through all this, they'd have come to me. I've got a great suggestion, which is don't exclude 50% of your membership. You know, you've got this problem is because they're struggling to fill a lot of these priesthood callings. Don't exclude 50% of the membership. That's it. And you could keep the wards. I'm sure, given that opportunity, they'd be able to fill all those positions. It wouldn't have been a problem.
Yeah,
just
Peter. Good point.
That was something that really struck me. You know, I'm still attending church every week, but when you're kind of out of the loop and you're looking at things a bit more objectively as an excommunicant sitting on the pew, you start to see with fresh eyes things you never noticed before. He mentioned nothing about the women. He had the male stake presidency members stand up and their wives. So the women who matter are the wives of the men with status and power, and thanked them and went on about their service. And the people in the prayers were thanking God for the service of these male leaders. I'm like, I don't think at any point a single mention was made of the Relief Society presidents, the State Relief Society presidents who've kept that show on the road all the years and given all that service. They just don't count. There wasn't a flicker of acknowledgement that they mattered or anything. You know, Elder Boom is just living in this world of the male general authorities where it's all about each other and the meetings they have with each other, and talking about each other, which you see all the time in the male leadership of the church. It was really stark today, especially as then the first 4 speakers were all women, female leaders in the stake. So I absolutely agree with you, Julian. You know, it's just so obvious that they're missing out 50% or more of the woman power who could be fulfilling these callings, if that's such an issue, if they didn't have a male-only priesthood. I think as far as which wards it's going to be, which stakes, looking at the maps, it seems to me that Romford would survive because they're adding the 2 Chelmsford wards to Romford. So I don't think they're going to erase Romford. That would give Romford a future, although it has been struggling. My cousin's stake president there, who's adorable. They have recently, to give some more context to the decline, Romford had a ward which is opposite. I'm in Gravesend, and opposite, you know, we can look at Gray's ward across the Thames estuary. Was a ward, and it got downgraded to a branch, which was fascinating. You know, you just don't expect that to happen, and that could definitely be the future for my ward, and for others are just tiny now if they're not going to merge them. So that's a little indicator of where they're going with the potential options here. So is Staines technically eviscerated now?
No, Staines exists. So the 2 surviving stakes, Watford, Staines, and Reading were all affected. I'm going to read the letter now.
Yeah.
And that will kind of clarify.
So I'm just trying to guess who these stakes are. So if it's not going to be Romford, I think it's more than likely to be Maidstone. I grew up.
Oh no, but there's 3. So Maidstone can go.
Yes. So who's number 3?
And Watford. Yeah. So who's number 3? I thought it might be Romford that'd be number 3, but if not, then who?
But if they're adding Chelmsford to Romford, that seems like it's going to survive. You know, so I'm curious about the 3rd. That's
because they won't kill Hyde Park because that's their flagship stake.
No.
In London.
Yeah.
So
So Maidstone could be chopped in half again. It was created from half of the old Maidstone stake, which became Canterbury, and bits of London. So Canterbury stake is surrounded on 3 sides by the ocean. So unless they've got a secret mermaid stake, it can't be attached to anything. So it will have to survive as the Canterbury stake. And the chances are they'll just take some of Maidstone stake to the west of it and give the rest back to London. So that's my prediction anyway.
Okay, so right, Maidstone's going to be the 2nd, and then it's just anyone's guess what the 3rd one is. Let's have a look at what they sent to us then, because this was sent to me in my email. Let me see if I can put everyone on the side. Can I do that? No, I can't do that. That's a shame. Yeah, you don't need to see my face. You can see everyone else's. There we go. Right. Okay, so Dear members of the Staines England Stake and the Reading England Stake, we were sent a separate one to Watford. Watford was sent one that was a little bit more flowery and kind of said nice things to them about how sad it was their stake was going. But this is what we were told. By instruction of the First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, and at the request of the Europe North Area Presidency, we share with you the following message pertaining to changes in the boundaries of our two stakes. The boundaries of the current Staines England Stake and Reading England Stake are realigned as described below with immediate effect. The name of the Reading England Stake has been changed to the Thames Valley England Stake, likewise with immediate effect. The realigned Staines England Stake includes the Farnborough Ward, the Bracknell Ward, and the Basingstoke Ward. Each is presently constituted. Members of those wards formerly of the Reading Stake are welcome members of the Staines England Stake. The realigned and renamed Thames Valley England Stake includes the High Wycombe Ward, the Slough Ward, and the Hayes Ward. Members of those wards, formerly part of the Staines England and Watford England Stakes, are welcomed as members of the Thames Valley England Stake. These changes are the product of revelation. Hold on to that phrase. And their purpose is to create and maintain environments where individuals and families can forge living personal relationships with the Saviour Jesus Christ. Together we desire to grow the church and kingdom of God on the earth. And in these newly reconstituted stakes, for Zion must increase in beauty and in holiness. Her borders must be enlarged. Her stakes must be strengthened. Yea, verily I say unto you, Zion must arise and put on beautiful garments. Please note the state conference for so they explain when the state conference is going to be. I'm just going to pull this part of the letter up because that makes it more clear. Staines England Stake now is Farnborough, Basingstoke and Bracknell, which used to be part of Reading Stake, so they've been taken away. Staines Ward, Addleston Ward, Kingston Ward and Riverway Ward, so they were all part of Staines originally. Thames Valley England Stake includes the following. High Wycombe wasn't part of ours before. Slough wasn't part of ours before. Hayes we took off Watford. So we've got High Wycombe. Slough came from someone else, I think. And then Newbury, Oxford First, my ward, Oxford Second Ward, Reading Ward, and Woodley Ward. Those are both in Reading. So that's, for those that are interested, that is exactly how the change has happened. Thoughts, everyone? Julian?
I just love the one that explains the purpose. It's just a whole lot of nothing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's completely meaningless. And this, for me, this is the thing that kind of gets me about this whole process. Like I said, it was good to hear him in the meeting kind of be honest about it and give the real reason. Just give us some honesty. We can take it. It's like with going back to the whole Lichfield one, when they closed the Lichfield stake and told them in the meeting, this is as a result of all of your hard work over 50 years. They're trying to spin it as a success story. Wow, haven't we done well? We're going to close the stake. It's ridiculous. Why can't they just tell us? Why can't they just be honest about it? And again, it's just this kind of infantilizing, that we see all the time in the church. And I mean, I know I've said this before, but I'd extend this all the way up to this whole ridiculous idea, or what I see as a ridiculous idea, that we're being led by men that have met Jesus and are in direct communication with God. We can just tell us, look, we're just people doing our best, and the church is struggling a little bit at the moment. We're losing some members. That's not important. There's nothing in the doctrine of the church that says that we've got to, grow and keep growing all right until the millennium or whatever. They could spin it in a way that allows us to maintain a faithful narrative, but just be honest with us, because that's just nothing. Look, I know I said this when we were chatting about it earlier. Nemo came round for lunch today.
It was delicious.
Thank you. It looks like it's been written by a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Just how can we pretend that we're answering this question of why we've done it without actually giving anything?
Because if we read what they say again, right, these changes are the product of revelation. And Ruth, I want to get your thoughts on that in a second. but the purpose is to create and maintain environments where individuals and families can forge living personal relationships with the Saviour Jesus Christ. Okay, so were they not able to do that in the current environment of their stake? Would seem the answer is no, because what we'll hear from Elder Boom later is he talks about how so many people have got 3 stake callings. My mum has got 3 stake callings currently. You know, a lot of people have got multiple stake callings, and so he kind of said that's what's going to get fixed. Ruth, can you tell me what your thoughts are on that phrase? These changes are the product of revelation. They're playing the revelation card.
I just find it so frustrating. They're so limited in their thinking. To call this revelation, it took you 2 years to have this revelation, 2 years to sit down with a map and look at the M4 and the M25. It's just bonkers that they think that they can sell that as the narrative. Every single faithful believing member knows that's a crock of shit. So why they would think that comes across as true? They've got the counter narrative ready in their scriptures to say, we're being persecuted, signs of the times, in the last days, even the very elect, blah, 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 blah. They could trot that out if they wanted a faithful, faith-promoting narrative to use that allows them to soothe their egos and tell themselves they're doing a wonderful job still. The honest answer is that people are walking away in droves, and those that remain are on their knees with 4 callings, with families who are spiritually broken, and they need to come up with something better than Zion's putting on a pretty dress. Get over yourselves, get over your egos, and start talking to these people like human beings who actually do know which way's up. It's utter nonsense. And because I do like a good allegory, the analogy that I used earlier with you, Nemo, and I know I said it tongue in cheek, but when Richard heard about this, he was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe they're selling that as we're doing better here." And I said, it's like the people on the Titanic being told, this is an upgrade for the first class passengers. You're now going to be traveling in a more, bespoke, intimate boat across the Atlantic to the US. The boat's going down, for crying out loud. Stop trying to tell us the boat's not sinking. We can see that it is. Can we actually help the people that are there?
Yeah, the stakes of the church are the deck chairs on the Titanic, and they're just being shuffled around. Jane, go on. Put me right.
I kind of want to maybe revisit a couple of the ideas that that you had kicked off, Julian. But first, because see if revelation is indeed a process, and I can handle that. I can handle a 2-year long if it's for the right reasons and it's coming in the right time. I don't especially care. What I do care about is the fact that in this day and age, even here in the UK, where we are short on numbers, there is no reason in this world why one human being has to hold that amount of callings. We are very inward looking. We don't take risks on people that we don't know. If you are proven safe hands, you're going to move into a new stake and you're going to still have, because this is what happens. We keep churning out and putting pressure on the same people over and over again until it breaks, because you can't do anything different. Take some risks, please, for goodness sake. But I have a question before we move on to sort of some of the ideas that, like, I want to pick up on some of the things that Richard was saying. Are people going to have to travel further or longer to get to church? Is this a helpful move?
No.
Okay.
Some people are going to have to travel quite a bit further to church, for sure.
Okay.
I was intrigued that they didn't, with this, actually start eviscerating the wards. And I'm wondering if there's going to be a second wave now. At the moment, he kept reassuring everyone, but you'll still be in the same ward, so it's kind of okay.
Because that's what we saw with Lichfield.
That's not sustainable.
Because with Lichfield, then the next week, Wolverhampton was merged. There was 2 wards in Wolverhampton, they were merged, and Cannock Ward was closed. So what I want to invite is, if anyone's watching this programme who's in any of these wards now, please go to church next week. Please take note of what is said, and please be ready for your ward to be closed. Peter, continue then.
I'm wondering if they've... Yeah. I think so. I'm thinking there must be a staged approach, because it's only the active membership is just going to relentlessly keep falling unless they change something, and they know this in their heart of hearts. So I'm trying to sort of imagine what they think the stages of disappearance are. So from what Boom said, I think their first step is, if we can put the wards together in larger stakes, you can keep things going with the same wards for a bit longer because you'll free some people up to do the callings that the wards need. And a lot of them are absolutely on a knife edge. I mean, my ward's back down to 30 on average on a Sunday again. You know, we've reached a point after not very. I mean, we always used to say, like, the Lord giveth and the stake taketh away. You know, someone called would move into the ward and then they'd get a stake calling and they're no use to the ward. So there seems to have been in Britain like a short window of maybe about 20 years in the late 80s into the 90s, where you just about had enough people to have one calling each, to do the ward callings, to run the programs and offer a few up to the stake. But so many leadership class people have left now that relentlessly it's now a case that you just can't. The church as a whole has adjusted by getting rid of separate elders and high priest groups. So that's halved the leadership there. They've got rid of young men presidencies and have one of the bishopric councillors do that now. So they've consolidated mainly with the men. I don't think they've cut any women jobs because there's a surplus of women compared to men. And so they've done that globally. They're now having to do this within stakes to have larger numbers of wards so the stake doesn't take so many people. I mean, honestly, you could probably get rid of most of the stake leaders. It wouldn't make any difference. But the next step would have to be, you're going to have to start closing wards and branches. Some of them you'll demote to branch size because we were discussing how technically you can run that with fewer people. Though not many fewer since these recent changes. They've kind of already done that to everyone. So the next wave will have to be wards closing or merging, and they've just done that to the two wards next to me. The two Gillinghams just got merged. Yeah. So that's next, and then what? It's just going to be relentless. Fewer and fewer wards and stakes, and you reach a point where this distance travelling becomes a real issue because it will be too far for elderly members to go and travel.
And the thing is, as the ward decreases, the elderly ones are the ones that are increasingly left over at the end, and like you said, they then are stuck with travel, which means those wards get closed, and it's a vicious cycle. A more important question has been asked in the chat though, and that is by RFM, who joins us this evening. Hello, and he asks, is Julian in hospital? So, Julian, I'll give you a chance to respond to that and then give us your comment before we hear what Elder Boom has to say.
No, I'm not. But I was a couple of weeks ago. I'm feeling a lot better now, thanks. Can I just make my
Is that all you're going to say, Julian?
I'm not in hospital. No, I'm not in hospital. I was going to comment on the whole Revelation thing. My eyesight's not good enough. I didn't read that.
RFM said he's too concerned about you, Julian, to listen to Peter.
RFM wants to know why, Julian.
I think you should DM him later. Carry on, Julian.
Just on the Revelation thing. So a couple of points, and you guys might need to kind of chip in on this because you probably remember it better than I do. But didn't the GA guy kind of contradict that idea anyway in the actual meeting, because he made reference to the fact that that Cook had come up with this plan, and he wasn't sure whether he'd get it past Ballard and Holland because they're, kind of.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
So that clearly wasn't done by Revelation in the way that they're kind of making out. But just simply put, in that letter, is the thing about Revelation, is it just code for don't moan? Don't moan about this. It was Revelation. Don't criticise. It was Revelation. It's just a way.
It's almost that thought-stopping thing. It's like, right, don't think about it anymore. God said so. Done. Move on. Yeah.
Do you think we'll go to like a Church of England style vicar sharing model, whereby we'll have a travelling bishop, a travelling young men's president, we meet every other week because we haven't got enough priesthood, and we definitely don't want to share it with anyone who's got a uterus. So we're going to send them around every other week. You get to take the sacrament.
I want to explain that to those in America who may not be familiar with the fact that the UK, in most villages, there is a church. Most villages, small little places, a couple of thousand people maybe. And as the UK increasingly secularized, less and less people were going to their local church. And so those churches then stopped getting as many donations. So they're sometimes only open every other week. And you'll have a group of maybe 4 villages in a circle like that where the priest will go round them in a 4 weekly rotation so that everyone gets a chance to be seen and have a service done. So yeah, that's the model that Ruth's referring to. Can we talk about how Elder Boom kind of admits the problem and the reason why they're doing this? Let's put this up on screen. Because he says, is this a step back?
Is this a step back? It's not a step back. It is strengthening the stakes. So when we have more strength, you remember that we yesterday talked about 1 calling per member and not 3 callings? This will help the process of just having 1 calling and have joy in your life, have enough time in your life to have friends outside the church as well, because that's very important. If we only live in this little bubble, that's not a good thing. We need to be also out there having time to have friends and share with these friends the gospel. This is how we can, in the years to come, will there be more stakes? Well, I think for the first few years, we might focus on strengthening these stakes, making our units larger than they are now. And then maybe in 3, 4, 5 years, we can start to, split stakes again. But your stakes are still small enough that the average stake in the mainland Europe has at least 8 units, 8 to 12 units. In England, the stakes are much smaller. So it's just an adjustment.
Just an adjustment. Don't you worry your pretty little heads. It's just an adjustment.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's
He's
plenty
so
to go
naive.
through.
Well, he's
plenty to
pretending
go
to
through
be.
there. Just for those wondering, he's Dutch. That's what his accent is. And I've sped all these clips up there at 1.5 speed because I don't have the patience or time to sit through general conference tempo more than I have to. I want to pick something out there first, where he said that we need to get out of our bubble, make friends with non-members, so that you can convert them and bring them to church and grow your stakes that way. And that's interesting because I was at Coventry Stake conference this weekend visiting family, and I sat in the Saturday evening session, and the mission president and the mission president's wife got up and they spoke, and they said that they get data on the people that have been baptized, how they were converted. And the data shows that the most effective thing in their mission was member referrals, members that brought friends to church. They were the ones most likely to get baptized. Then, and this is really interesting, the church's paid advertising on social media is the second most effective tool. And they specifically said not missionaries' Facebook profiles. So that will go back to something we've talked about before, whereas who is a mission really for? It's the church knows that actual missionaries aren't really that effective, but it's so that they will get further entrenched in the church because they face constant rejection from the outside world. But didn't you think it was interesting that he said that we need to make friends outside of our bubble, that he referenced the bubble and said we need to make friends? Peter?
Well, absolutely. I mean, but he's so delusional because even with 1 calling, you still don't have time for friendships outside of the church. It's not enough. The idea that going back to 1 calling, suddenly we can do this. This is always, and I don't believe it. I've been a ward mission leader in 3 different wards and all the rest of it. The whole mission system is totally broken, but the missionaries could be converting a lot of people. When I was ward mission leader in Welling, our missionaries rocked. They found everyone. There were very, very few actual member referral conversions. All this thing about that's the big goal to go for. I think it's delusional. It's not.
That's what the data
true.
says. The data says that's what's working.
I know, but this is their stupidity. They retrofit it the wrong way. They told us this data when I was a missionary, 89 to 91, that if you have a referral from a member, being taught by the missionaries, that person is like staggeringly more likely to eventually join the church. Therefore, let's put all our time in spending time with members to get referrals from them. But then you find they don't have these friends because they're too busy with church. The thing Boom recognized, but they're still reaching the wrong conclusion from this. Your golden referral from a member is once in a lifetime. I've managed 1 in my lifetime. you don't have that many people who you can get to a point where they could meet with the missionaries. Each member might only have one or two of those people in their lifetime, really, seriously. So of course they're high yield, and the member has usually waited a long time to find some missionaries they'd actually trust with them. That's a whole other issue. But that doesn't mean there's a golden member referral tree. It's an empty shell. The idea that that's your answer has always been wrong, and they should know this by now. That they're looking at the data the wrong way around. If the missionaries actually had a system that worked, where they're not jumping straight in with apostasy and restoration at the beginning of their conversations with people, which immediately filters out anyone who's not like super religiously nerdy or just nuts. If they actually had things to teach that would connect with educated people, if they had a working routine where they're outside while people are going to work, not when everyone who's middle class with a job, who the church suits, is already in their office, and then they go out into the daylight. So of course the only people that they meet are going to be transient people, refugees, people working part-time or difficult hours.
Peter, I'm going to stop you right there. Peter,
in the church.
I'm going to stop you there because we're talking about missionary work of the church now, which I don't want to get off topic too much about the reorganization of the stakes. I don't want to get into the flaws of the church.
His whole analysis is wrong. It's not
Julian,
happen, is it?
then Ruth.
Yeah.
But yes, I take your point.
You're right, Peter, but you're taking it too seriously because he doesn't really mean that. That was just an excuse. That was just an excuse to say, oh, we're doing it because it's part of our missionary, this new inspired missionary kind of program. It's bollocks. That whole thing was just nonsense. And to spin it as, is this a step back? No, of course it's not. Well, hang on a sec. Why is everybody doing 3 callings? Because the stake is shrinking. Those stakes were all, it's not like, they've been there since the beginning of time.
Always doing 3 callings.
These stakes all grew and developed because the church was growing. Now the church is shrinking. Yes, it's a step back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ruth?
I am that golden family. I am that. A friend brought me into the church, and I know that. But ultimately, after 30 odd years in the church, very, very active, very, very faithful serving member. Don't contradict me, Julian. I've walked away because it's a crap proposition, because the product is crap. It doesn't matter how good the sales force is. They're selling something that is ultimately provably false. And there should be, if it was a good product, we don't need any missionaries to sell something that is good. You don't need any advertising for a product that is good. It sells itself. And the whole point of this is if they are measuring the success of the church by, are we growing, are we shrinking, they know themselves it's a crap product. Because that should never be a metric. If the truth is the truth is the truth, they shouldn't care how many people are sat in the pews. It is true. The fact that he feels the need to justify and say, oh, it's not that we're getting smaller. It's not that people don't love us. It's not that people don't want this thing that we've got. It's something else that's going on here. Tells you that they know it's a rubbish product that they're offering now. I just find it so annoying that they feel the need to say this to the faithful members, the people that are there desperately trying to stay, desperately trying to serve, desperately trying to prop up these programs which have no validity anymore. Why do we need all of these callings? Why can't it be enough for people to just come together and sing some hymns and worship together and feel community? Why do they have to have all of this? Because it strokes somebody's ego somewhere further up the chain. They're not concerned about somebody who's having 3 callings and a busy family life and trying to struggle and make it all work and drive 20 miles to get to church and 20 miles back again and then take the kids to a fireside. And then they're not bothered about that. It's stroking an ego further up the chain.
Yes. Okay. Julian, then I want to get Jane's input.
Yeah, I've got an analogy for you, Ruth.
Go on.
Go for it.
Do better, but listening to you there, it's the Matrix. They are the Matrix. They don't want us to work out that we're just batteries. So they're doing all these things because the goal always has to be just keep everybody comfortable. let them continue to go to church, pat themselves on the back. Everything's okay. Don't panic, because they don't want us to see that we're just batteries.
Yeah, that's a great point. Jane?
I think that's the experience for lots of people going to any church. I don't think that's unique to Mormonism or any group where that's kind of what we do as a firm while we're there. I am really sorry, as someone from Scotland, God's own country, who's seeing my neighbouring England's members falling away. I'm sorry that you're going through this. I am really sorry this is happening to you. And so that I can, be mistaken and think it's because of your personal unrighteousness amongst members, it's nice to sort of be reassured by, President Baum that it's because you're being strengthened. So I think you should keep that in mind as a positive. I think
that from Mrs. Zero Temples.
Oh,
What's your point?
We're going to get 5 next year. Anyway,
carry on.
Because I think it's coming back to what I wanted to pick up on about what Julian's saying. Obviously it's going to, when you reassemble a dying ward and bring together the strongest people, then it's going to, in a way, strengthen the church, right? Or strengthen that unit. That's what it's going to look like. But also, it's a problem. Also, it's a sign that things haven't been going well. And both things can be true. You can spin it that way, and there's the truth there, but also we all know, we can recognize that the church isn't doing well. To Peter's point, all we need to do as members has ever been, if there was only one person that you introduced the church to in your whole life, the church would be fantastic. The thing is, what I'm experiencing in the church in the UK is that we like to feel safe. We like to feel comfortable. We don't take risks. We don't extend callings to people who, we could, just put them in, who aren't part of that leadership class. We don't want the church to change, because as new people come into the church, it changes what it looks like. And we don't like that. I have this absolute conviction that members of the church, generally speaking, you can see what you like on a Sunday, but do not want to do missionary work. And I think that's part of the problem here in the UK. We want to feel safe. Like I say, I love the imagery around strengthening the stakes of Zion. I think that bringing that in is really helpful, but it's also not giving us this real picture of what is going on. We know here in Scotland that rurality is a huge problem. People will just stop coming to church. Now, if you want to offset that with a more creative way that people could be involved in church, can Zoom properly be extended? Can real ministry look different? Or to pick up on what Ruth is saying, what would be absolutely brilliant is, could we just go where we're happiest? And if that means I travel further or less far to get to where good programs are being offered, or the ministry looks really good, or I have opportunities to serve in creative ways. Dying wards, if you're not doing very well as a leader, if your bishop is crap, if your bishop doesn't listen, if there are problems with safeguarding in your area, people will just stop going, and then it's more of an indication that you need to fix the problem. So I would like to see, throughout church, we would love to see that, right?
Maxine Kennedy said something really interesting here. They're saying it's strengthening by retreat, not advance. I think a good word for it would be consolidation. You consolidate your assets when you've lost a load of them, and so you need to work out what you've got left and try and make it work with your now reduced amount of tools or instruments or whatever. So I think that's a way to look at it. And also, I like the point you kind of alluded to, where it says in these letters that you should continue to to attend your wards as constituted. And I wonder how many people are going to want to move around. And it's always been a problem in the LDS Church that where you live dictates what unit you attend, and there's no flexibility in that. You're not allowed to attend another ward and still be able to participate fully in the church. And some people say, oh, well, that's for organizational issues. It keeps things neat. It keeps things tidy. But actually, it would be really helpful to the church because they would soon realize which wards work and which ones don't. What things work, what things don't. Because if everyone's flocking to a ward where people can be open on a Sunday and honest about the history of the church, then they realize, oh, maybe that's actually a good thing. Maybe. But they have no way of knowing because all this is just based on the opinions of 12 men who sit in a little bubble, as Elder Bohm called it. They sit in a bubble and they think they know how all this works. And they're not on the ground and they don't see it. So that's my thoughts on that. Can I just throw up this clip here where he talks about the apostles who were not necessarily going to be on board? Let's throw this up.
We're in a growing church. We do hope, as area presidency, that in the years to come, we will have to make many changes because of growth. And when we listen to President Nelson, January 2022, we have an unprecedented future. The church in Europe has an unprecedented future. I hope you believe that. I do believe that. I think by making these changes, by giving you a little bit more air, we will be able to lift to a higher plateau and fulfill prophecy with that. I'll leave you my testimony that I know that all these changes, starting with the Watford Stake and what is next to come, that prophets, seers, and revelators have taken a very careful look at this. This has been a tough one, where Elder Quinton Cook said, I will be the one that will present it to the 12. Because two members of the 12 will have a difficult time with it, and that's Elder Holland and Elder Ballard. But Elder Holland and Elder Ballard approved on it as well. I testify that this process has been approved by heaven, and that we'll see the blessings of it. And I do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
So they are approved by heaven, not necessarily by by Ballard and by Holland. But that idea that the church has an unprecedented future in Europe, how can you say that with a straight face as you're closing down a stake?
Unprecedented means unknown. We're in new territory. We're in unknown territory.
Never been done before. So the church has never shrunk in Europe before. That's true.
Yeah.
It's doing it for the first time. Well, technically, it's shrunk in Europe before because it shrunk in the UK when everyone left for Utah. So it got big and then shrunk. Peter. Yeah.
This is the prophet who promised everyone that if we got the name of the church right, we'd have unprecedented knowledge poured down from heaven onto the saints. It's just some nonsense, totally insane craziness that Nelson said in a broadcast to Europe, which whoever really runs the church was so ashamed of, they immediately removed all trace of it from the internet.
But it still exists on this channel.
His broadcast to Europe was over. And it's madness because, we remember in 2010 when we were all challenged to double sacrament attendance in Europe by the then area president, Teixeira, who's gone on to, promotion. And what actually happened was it crashed. And towards the end of that 10-year period, I heard two stake leaders sort of were grappling with this. Do we just quietly let it go because it's so obviously not happened? Or are we going to have a last push in the last year and the miracle will happen and we'll suddenly double sacrament attendance? And when that sort of challenge was first issued, it seemed so tame to have a whole decade to either reactivate or convert just one other person for each active person. It seemed so unambitious. But look what happened. We crashed. It got worse. We couldn't even manage that.
We have the data.
So these people have they've had plenty of warning. They've had decades of warning that none of the things they are doing are working. And the more they say this nonsense, the more delusional they're becoming. And they're hanging on to some random thing that the prophet said that, there's going to be unprecedented growth in Europe. And it was racist. When Nelson said this, he was talking about how the blood of Israel runs in Europe. I mean, it was gross because the most of the blood of Israel that ran through Europe was the Holocaust, the blood of the slaughtered Jews running through the streets of Europe. And he comes in with his stupid, naive, anti-Semitic, arguably cultural appropriation that Mormons do with the Jewish thing in Europe and saying something like that. I mean, and this is what these people are hanging on to because that's why Nelson said it. He's like, I will fix everyone here for the next several decades because the prophet made a promise that we're going to grow, even though everything is showing that we're not. And
including the very act of closing a stake that he is involved in.
Yeah.
Can I just jump to Ruth?
Delusion. It's crazy.
Yeah, Ruth. You look
I
like
was
you're going to
going
say
to
something.
well, I was just going to say that negative growth is unprecedented growth. It's just negative. It's just going in the opposite direction. It's still a calculation that we've not had to do before, but that's the reality that we're living in. And what they can't fathom is that actually, if they wanted to show their active believing members that they cared about them, they'd be changing systems and changing programs, not trying to pretend and waffle and fabricate numbers and make those poor people who still believe and still trying to go feel guilty for the church's ineptitude. It isn't the members' fault. It really, really isn't. They're working their little socks off, trying to keep
I
everything.
so agree.
But it can't be done.
It's a spectacular abdication of responsibility, isn't it, Ruth?
Yeah.
It's just they're not even trying to find out why this is happening.
When you've got
there is no
70-year-olds,
glimmer of indication anywhere.
when you've got 70-year-olds being called as primary teachers, as my mum was, and being made to feel responsible that you've got to come every week, you've got to do all these things, you've got to, you're crawling around the floor with the 4-year-olds. You suddenly realise that there's a whole. I remember in my 40s looking behind me, thinking, well, where's the people in their 20s that I was as State Young Women's president, and in my 30s as on the Relief Society presidencies and things? Where are those people coming up behind me? They weren't there, and I was still doing all those callings, and as were my sort of peer group, until we started to realise, crikey, there's something very wrong here. And started to give ourselves the time to actually dig into the information. And then we've stepped away. So all that is left is the very, very young and the very, very old, neither of which have any responsibility for the failings of this organisation.
Yes, but...
Right on. Jane, then Julian.
I think this is one of those situations where two things can be true. I completely agree. He mentioned earlier on that we can't live in a bubble. We don't have that luxury here in the UK because life isn't based around wards, and unless the church keeps you busy enough. This tends to happen in families who've been in the church for a few generations, or if you are a solid enough priesthood holder where your family becomes involved. If you can serve, then you will be put to work, and that's what has been keeping people in. And maybe this isn't the time or the place to be speaking about it, but I do think members play a bloody huge part in the decline of the church, because we can be absolutely horrible. This weekend, I have friends who are going to stake conference. I only wished I had gone with them because of how they were treated. Glares, judgmental looks, snubs. Since when is that our church? Even if you feel that someone's going to church to possibly vote opposed, or to, maybe they have a different point of view from you, this closing of ranks, this judgmental attitude, how dare you? And unfortunately, when so many of us are going to church, they feel those judgmental looks. Now, I've only ever had positive experiences in my ward, but overwhelmingly my friends are experiencing the exact opposite. So maybe I just have a super thick skin and I haven't noticed, but our LGBTQ and trans families, they are not being respected. They're not being cared for. People who have stepped back from church activity, they're not, they're being treated abominably. We have members, excommunicated members of this group, and members who are active in church who are treated appallingly, and that is not okay. So yeah, I'm going to put some of this on members' doorsteps. When you go to church, you expect to find Christianity there, at least a little bit. And if it's not to be found, then people are going to leave and go where they don't have to put up with that crap.
That's a fair point. Julian?
Yeah, just a reflection on what Ruth was saying. I think some of I think the issue reflects some of the problems that we've got over here in the UK with education and health service. You know, we've got National Health Service that I'm really, really proud of, and an education system that I'm really proud of. But they're really struggling, and one of the reasons that they're struggling is that the people that run the country don't use them. The people that run the country send their kids to private school and private healthcare, and so they're completely out of touch. And we saw that really clearly when Michael Gove was Secretary for Education and said that the subjects like art and drama and music are of no value, but Latin and Greek are, completely out of touch. And we've got that same problem with the leadership of the church, because they are in a bubble. They're in their Utah bubble. And I know that Utah is seeing some of the problems that we're seeing elsewhere, but not on the same scale. And, they've come from these legacy Mormon families. They're sitting on a pile of cash, and everyone's saying how wonderful that they are. They get flown around the world, and everybody stands when they come in the building and sings, "We thank thee, O God, for a prophet," and all that. And so they've got no reason. They've got no real incentive to sit down and go, "Is there a problem here?" Because they live in that bubble.
I may have sung "We Thank Thee, O God, for a Prophet" today. That may have been a thing that happened. So let me tell that story. I turned up to my home stake, a stake that I haven't been to since I moved down to Oxford, but I was attending the stake conference with my mother and with members of my family, and I used to be in the choir down there, and they grabbed me and said, "Oh, could you come sing with the choir? We're short on men." So I thought, yeah, that's fine. And I didn't know what we were going to be singing. I got handed the music because I was just going to sight read it, and I look at the top and it says, "We thank thee, O God, for a prophet." I thought to myself, can I do this? And I did. I did it. I was able to just go and sing it. That's fine. It's not a problem.
Did you think disappointing? Nemo?
Oh, I was loving the irony of being there, particularly when I started to sing the line, "The wicked who fight against Zion shall surely be smitten at last." And I just waited for a lightning bolt and nothing came. So, jokes on them, I suppose. But there was no sustaining votes for me to vote opposed. Otherwise, the beauty would have been I would have voted opposed and then walked up and sang that song and just watched members' heads explode with just dissonance. They wouldn't have understood what was going on. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Thank you very much for everyone in the chat. And I shouldn't say thank you very much at the end, because then everyone knows it's the end and you start clicking off. But don't click off before you go and click the like button and the subscribe button and maybe even the donate button if you're feeling particularly generous. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Unfortunately, we're probably going to see more of this, and I urge you to stay tuned because we will be covering it as and when it happens. There's 2 more stakes to close. We'll let you know who they are as soon as we know who they are. And again, everyone, please go and attend your wards next week, or talk to family and friends that do. Find out which wards get closed off the back of this, because I have a feeling some will. And I say these things... No, right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you all again soon. Cheers. Bye.